The path forward. What real reform would look like? Real reform requires fundamental structural changes that address the systematic failures evident since Valcartier. Safety experts emphasize the need for mandatory independent safety boards at every Canadian Forces base hosting youth programs. These boards would include civilian safety experts, medical professionals, and youth advocacy representatives with full authority to suspend training activities when safety concerns arise. Unlike current advisory committees that lack enforcement power, these boards would have legal authority to override military commanders who prioritize operational schedules over safety protocols. The structural changes needed for genuine accountability require separating safety oversight from operational command structures entirely. Military personnel responsible for youth safety would report directly to civilian authorities rather than through military chains of command that create conflicts of interest. This separation mirrors successful reforms in other high-risk industries that have implemented independent oversight following major accidents. Safety officers would receive tenure-like protection from retaliation, ensuring they can raise concerns without career consequences. Their performance evaluations would be conducted by civilian oversight bodies rather than military supervisors who might prioritize institutional reputation over safety transparency. High-risk industries offer successful safety transformation models that can be adapted for military youth programs. These models prioritize a proactive, prevention-based approach, focusing on identifying and mitigating hazards before accidents occur. This involves implementing rigorous safety protocols, providing comprehensive training, and fostering a culture where all personnel are empowered to report safety concerns and take corrective action. Military youth programs need identical systems where cadets, instructors, and support staff can report safety violations anonymously. Safety culture must also emphasize that anyone can halt operations if they observe dangerous conditions, regardless of rank or position. This authority must extend to military youth programs, where teenage participants should be empowered to refuse unsafe activities without disciplinary consequences. Independent oversight requires civilian involvement that extends beyond token representation on advisory committees. Retired military personnel should be excluded from oversight roles to prevent institutional bias from influencing safety decisions. Civilian oversight boards should be staffed by engineers, scientists, and public safety experts who have no financial or career ties to the military institutions they regulate. Military youth oversight needs similar independence, with board members selected by civilian authorities and funded through separate budget allocations that prevent military retaliation through budget manipulation. Transparency requirements must be strengthened through legislative mandates that eliminate military discretion over safety information disclosure. Current access to information laws contain too many exceptions that allow military officials to classify safety reports as operationally sensitive or personally confidential. New legislation should require automatic public release of all youth safety incident reports within 30 days, regardless of classification level or sensitivity concerns. Parliamentary committees need enhanced investigative authority, including subpoena power to compel testimony from military personnel and access to classified safety documents. These committees should also receive independent funding for technical experts who can challenge military assertions about safety practices. Legislative changes should establish minimum safety standards for military youth programs that cannot be modified without parliamentary approval. These standards would specify supervision ratios, qualification requirements for instructors, mandatory equipment inspections, and protocols for handling dangerous materials. The legislation should also create criminal liability for military officials who knowingly allow youth program safety violations to continue. Corporate executives face criminal charges when workplace safety failures cause deaths or injuries, and military commanders should face similar accountability when their decisions endanger young people under their supervision. Implementation of comprehensive safety reforms requires significant resources and a clear timeline, but the costs remain modest relative to the expenses already incurred through accident settlements and ongoing medical care. Safety reforms need adequate funding for training, equipment, and personnel, as well as establishing a phased implementation plan with specific milestones and deadlines. Regular review and updates to the plan are necessary to ensure that progress is being made and that the safety of military youth programs is continuously improved. Cultural change initiatives must address the institutional resistance that has prevented meaningful safety improvements for decades. The military's hierarchical culture discourages questioning authority or challenging operational decisions, creating conditions where safety concerns are suppressed rather than addressed. Cultural transformation requires leadership changes that prioritize safety over operational efficiency. Military personnel who report safety violations should receive career advancement preferences rather than subtle punishment through reduced promotion opportunities or undesirable assignments. Safety performance metrics should carry equal weight with operational readiness scores in evaluating base commanders and training officers. Professional development programs need complete restructuring to emphasize safety leadership alongside tactical and administrative skills. Current military education focuses primarily on operational effectiveness, with safety training relegated to brief modules that personnel complete as administrative requirements. Safety education should be integrated throughout military career development, with advancement to senior positions requiring demonstrated competency in safety management and institutional accountability. Officers who oversee youth programs should complete civilian safety management courses rather than relying solely on military training that may perpetuate problematic cultural attitudes. Survivor advocacy groups possess crucial insights that military institutions continue to ignore or minimize. Valcartier survivors have developed detailed recommendations based on their observations of ongoing safety problems, but these recommendations are consistently dismissed as uninformed criticism from people who lack current military experience. Meaningful reform requires incorporating survivor perspectives into policy development processes, not just consulting them for public relations purposes. Survivor advisory boards should have voting representation on safety oversight committees and access to current incident data that allows them to identify patterns similar to those that cause their own traumatic experiences. Family involvement in driving reform extends beyond survivors to parents of current cadets who observe safety problems but lack channels for raising concerns effectively. Parent organizations need formal roles in safety oversight rather than being relegated to fundraising and social activities. These organizations should receive safety training that enables them to identify potential problems during base visits and public demonstrations. Parents also need legal protection from retaliation when they report safety concerns, including provisions that prevent their children from being excluded from programs due to parental advocacy activities. The blueprint for preventing future tragedies combines proven safety management principles with oversight mechanisms that address the specific institutional failures that enabled Valcartier and continue to threaten current participants. The necessary changes require challenging military institutional authority and acknowledging that current safety standards remain inadequate despite decades of promised improvements. Political will remains the crucial missing element for implementing reforms that could save lives and prevent future tragedies. Without that commitment, the same institutional failures that have persisted for 5 decades will continue to endanger young Canadians who trust military institutions with their safety. The evidence demands action from citizens who cannot rely on military institutions to reform themselves. 50 years have passed since 6 teenagers died in that Valcartier classroom, yet the institutional failures that killed them persist across Canadian military youth programs today. The same communication breakdowns, safety shortcuts, and accountability gaps continue threatening young people who trust these institutions with their lives. Recent leaked reports show 9.4% of newly enrolled Canadian Armed Forces recruits quit in 2023 to 2024, more than double the average attrition rate, with training delays and adjustment difficulties cited as primary reasons for leaving. 5 decades of reform promises have failed to solve core safety problems that enable preventable tragedies. Strong civilian oversight, transparent incident reporting, and cultural change, not just new protocols, are essential to fulfill the promises made after Valcartier.